Women. Item 3, declarations of interests. Any received early?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillors, anything to declare today, or are we clear? Thank you very much. Questions from members of the public?
No questions, Chairman.
And questions from members?
No questions from members.
Thank you very much. Item 6, leaders and portfolio holders updates. I have no particular updates. Does any portfolio holder have anything that they wish to put into the public agenda? Thank you very much. We will move on to item 7, medium-term financial plan, which is in the competent hands of Councillor Merryweather.
Thank you, Leader. That is very kind of you. There is a set of documents, appendices 1 through 6 to the report. You'll find it on pages 7 through 66 plus in the pack. We are very familiar with these, with all of the issues, but I will just briefly introduce you to the annexes and the key highlights. Annex 1, the draft medium-term financial plan, summarises where we are between now and 2023-24, and it effectively rolls forward stuff that we already knew, and that is that we face very severe financial pressures, not only cost pressures but also revenue pressures as central government either withdraws the remaining funding that we get from it, or regulates the funding that we receive from our businesses and our residents. So those pressures over a period of time, over the next 4 years to 23-24, actually aggregate up to an annual challenge of north of £5 million. This year, in 2021, the pressure is around about £1.9 million, and that is all detailed in Annex 1. We've taken mitigating actions as a result of the work of the Budget Strategy Working Group and others to address that in terms of both cost and revenue actions, and we are proposing a balanced budget for this year. Not just because we want to, not just because it is our corporate strategy to have a financially sound Waverley, but because we have to, not least because we don't have the reserves in any event to run a budget deficit. In the annexes 2 and 3 in particular, you will see the details of the draft general fund budget. This is just the general fund. It does not include the housing revenue account, which will be dealt with separately later on today. So it doesn't include any of our social housing activities. But within the budget that you'll see particularly in detail to Annex 2 on page 29, you'll see the variations from last year's approved budget, which hide, in some cases, particularly the service cost, the much larger swings and roundabouts in terms of costs and revenues that we've been dealing with. In essence, though, at the end of the day, although the government has capped us to the higher of £5 or 2% in terms of the increase that they will allow us to make in the council tax that we set from our residents, we are proposing a 1.9% increase this year as a result of the jolly hard work that we've been able to do in all of the areas of the budget, including cost savings, I should emphasise, of nearly £700,000 this year. And also the important contribution that's being made by the increase in the council tax base from all of the new developments that are taking place across the borough. Possibly the only benefit some of our residents would say that they see from the building that's going on across our area. So with that said, I would like to propose the recommendations. I'm not sure if I have to read them out or whether you read them out. You'll read them later? Very good. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Merryweather. I have two speakers. First of all, I have Councillor John Gray.
Thank you, Leader. I will withdraw my question. So I was going to raise. I need more time to look at some of the papers that have been issued later.
Thank you, Councillor. I then have Councillor Stephen Mulliner.
Thank you, Leader. I speak as the Chairman of the Budget Strategy Working Group. We know what the challenge is, as Councillor Merryweather has put forward. The group's purpose was to review income and costs in as much detail as possible to understand how best this challenge could be faced. The potential for increasing income from fees and charges was investigated by talking to the heads of service directly. Some we know are set by central government, including planning fees and council tax, and are effectively limited to inflation. Those not so constrained, building control fees, careline fees, green waste collection fees, leisure centre income, parking income and income from investments. The group's disappointing but clear conclusion is that none of the first four types offer any potential for significant above-inflation growth, either at all or at least over the next 4 years, which is when it will matter most. Parking income does offer significant growth potential. The Council is free to set charges as it wishes, subject to statutory limits which restrict the use of the surplus, currently 4 million out of a gross income of 5 million, to meet environmental costs such as waste collection, street cleaning and management of parks and countryside. These costs currently total over 5 million. It is to be noted that Waverley parking charges were last increased in April 2017. Investment income was favoured in the recent residents' survey, although no details were given to respondents about the nature of such investments. The Council has hoped to generate 1.2 million additional income by investing up to 60 million over the next 4 years in good quality commercial property yielding 6% per annum. After paying 2% interest costs and 2% sinking fund contribution, that would leave 2%, and 2% of 60 million is 1.2 million. The main funding source was to be the Public Works Loan Board. Unfortunately, on the 9th of October 2019, the Treasury, concerned about the amount of local authority investment in commercial property, raised loan board interest rates by 1%. This makes the source of additional income much less attractive, because generating the same amount of additional income will entail much higher risk, either by having to invest almost twice as much or being willing to purchase lower quality investments with a greater risk of voids. The possibility of new revenue streams were also investigated. No projects have yet been identified, and given the generally slow development of such projects by local authorities before and after approval, the group concludes it is highly unlikely that any significant income can be generated from new revenue streams in the next 4 years. The group also scrutinised the business transformation programme, which is planned to achieve 1 million efficiency savings during the next 4 years. The customer service project is one of the largest elements and is aimed to improve customer experience and save £300,000 a year through replacing service area customer handling by a central call centre and greater opportunity for online self-service. The group supports the objectives, but given the history of such software-driven projects in both the public and private sectors, is very cautious about both the extent of the savings that will be achieved and the time in which they will be delivered. Turning to the proposed budget, 3 aspects deserve comment. First, council tax has not been increased by the maximum possible, despite the fact the effects of annual inflation on costs is £300,000 more than the amount we can increase council tax. The decision to limit the increase to 1.9% will save a Band D taxpayer 3p a week, but causes the council to forego £83,000 per annum, or over £340,000 over 4 years with compounding. Second, the proposed budget for 2021 contains some distinctly uncertain elements. The £300,000 of commercial property income may not be possible given the paucity of opportunities in the borough, the competition from cash-rich property funds, and the basic difficulty of completing deals at the right price and yield. Planning and leisure centre income may well be lower than assumed. The point is that the budgeted savings not achieved in 2021 will worsen the situation in 21-22, when the council is already expected to start with a deficit of 1.27. Leader, may I continue for about 15 more seconds? Lastly, the acknowledged severity of the challenge.
Please carry on at leisure, Councillor Mulliner. Do not feel hurried.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the acknowledged severity of the challenge demands a strategic decision, namely whether the council should impose deep service cuts to make major savings and so bring costs into line with significantly lower income, or keep services at their current level by a combination of significantly raising income and making efficiency savings. It is not completely clear whether the executive has actually committed to either option. The cost savings it is relying on are definitely efficiency savings, but the income increases are cautious. Perhaps the executive has decided to wait and see and leave the tough choices until the next budget in 12 months' time. If so, the risk is this will be too late to avoid being forced into option A and deep service cuts. It would therefore be very welcome if the executive was able to clearly state at the forthcoming council meeting its strategic approach for the next 4 years. Both residents and councillors are entitled to know what to expect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mulliner. Does any member of the executive wish to comment further?
Very, very briefly. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Mulliner, for that explanation. It was actually, I think, very useful for not just members of the exec, but anybody watching this to see what the role of the Budget Strategy Working Group is. I'm sure Councillor Merryweather will respond to some of your specific questions. I just wanted to very quickly say that certainly in the survey that we put out, residents did identify that cost savings and efficiencies were the primary areas that we should be looking at, and do want to reiterate the £700,000 that we have saved in that domain already. And the very final thing I'm going to say is just thank you to Councillor Merryweather for making himself available so much to all members of the council, not just the executive, to explain what is a relatively complex budgeting process for local government to the many, many members that have needed to go into that in some depth and need the explanation. So I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of a number of us to Councillor Merryweather for doing that. So thank you.
Portfolio holder, did you wish to say any more, or shall I put the vote to the accounts?
I'm happy just to come back on a couple of points. In terms of the work of the Budget Strategy Working Group, I don't think it's fair or right to underestimate the work that they have done. Councillor Mulliner has led a great charge there, not only in terms of strategy, but in terms of oversight. And I don't think any of us are unfamiliar with the risks and the uncertainties that the action plans entail. But we do have to remind ourselves that we wouldn't even be having this discussion if central government wasn't taking away our business rates, the business rates that we collect on their behalf from our businesses, capping our ability to raise council tax, and putting a hand behind our back when it comes to the commercial activities that they allow us to undertake, and the fees, the charges and the surpluses that they allow us to make from those activities. So no, nobody underestimates the challenge that we face, but the Budget Strategy Working Group also commissioned a budget consultation from our residents, and the budget consultation came back very, very clearly that they want us, in fact expect us, to look at other commercial income generating activities before we consider increasing council taxes, before we consider increasing fees and charges like car parking. Others, I think they're slightly more relaxed about. So yes, the largest single commercial opportunity for us is property. The Budget Strategy Working Group has focused, as Councillor Mulliner said, on commercial property. But our opportunity here in this borough is in open market residential letting property, where we have a structural advantage over our would-be competitors. We own land, the largest single cost in property development. That gives us a cost advantage that they do not have. We have a target to build thousands of homes in this borough, and if we don't do it, other people will, as long as there's money to be made. So it's something that will have a very, very long lead time, but it is something that we have to look at. We have to multitask here. We have to look at everything, including open market residential property. In terms of car parking, yes, previous administrations have not increased car parking charges. And as Councillor Mulliner says, it is something that can be increased as and when we need to. And if we do need to increase car parking charges next year, we will. In the meantime, it's very clear from the strategic review that charges are only part of what car parking is about, and that availability of car parking spaces, underutilisation in some places, overutilisation in others are other issues that need to be addressed. And this year, we are starting on a smarter review of car parking charges than just a simple blanket increase in rates. Which brings me to the final point on council tax. As I said, one of the many reasons we're able to balance the budget at just 1.9% is because there is an increase in the council tax base of around about £150,000, which of course more than mitigates the £83,000 which we're foregoing this year by holding back below the £5. Of course, the max tax argument that you have to tax at £5 or whatever the cap set assumes a couple of things. It assumes, for one, that you'll never be able to catch up. Next year, we'll have to tax at the maximum level, and the year after that, and the year after that. You never catch up. There's always an unfair cap, and you will always tax at it. That's the logic of the argument. If that's the policy, well, so be it. But for us, we're going to listen to what our residents want us to do, and we will try and do it as best we can, but we will keep our powder dry just in case we can't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other executives? In that case, let's move to the recommendation, which is recommendation 7. It is recommended that the executive, after considering comments from the Value for Money Overview and Scrutiny Committee, makes the following recommendations to Council. 1. We agree a 1.9% increase in Waverley's element of the council tax charge for 2020/21, which is equivalent to around 7p a week on a Band D property. 2, that we agree to make no change to the council's existing council tax support scheme. 3, that we agree the proposed fees and charges as shown in Annex 4. 4, that we approve the general fund budget for 2020/21 as described in this report and in Annexes 2 and 3. And finally, 5, that we approve the general fund capital programme as shown in Annex 6. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 8, capital strategy for 2020/21, incorporating treasury management strategy and property investment strategy, which is yet again in the hands of Councillor Merryweather.
Thank you, Leader. I'll try and keep this short. So we're required annually to produce this suite of documents. There are 7, as you can see from the annexes to the report, and they are documents that present our strategy, both in terms of our treasury strategy, which is our cash on deposits and money market activities, as well as our property investment strategy, which is our newest version, which anticipates our diversification into open market residential property development. They are written in compliance with various regulations, including from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. I think that's probably about all I need to say, frankly. There we are.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other members of the Executive wish to comment? In which case I will put the recommendation to you that the Executive recommends the capital strategy for 2020-21, incorporating the Treasury Management Strategy, prudential indicators and property investment strategy, and it is recommended to Council for approval. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We move to item 9, Housing Revenue Account Business Plan, Revenue Budget and Capital Programme for 2020-21, and this is in the hands of Councillor Rosoman.
Thank you, Leader. Where do we start? Obviously, over the last 4 years, there's been a difficulty because annual rent was reduced over the last 4 years. We now have the chance to raise it, and that is being done in line with the permitted increase. We need to do this in order to be able to service our maintenance requirements, possibly, hopefully, build more council homes, and service the loan going forward in the future. We're never going to catch up with those 4 years of reductions, and this, I believe, is the best way forward. There is a lot of work that has been done on this, and I would commend the officers involved for their hard work in providing this report and the plan. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any member of the Executive wish to comment? In that case, I will put the recommendation to you. It's very long-winded, but for the sake of the webcast, I will read it in full unless Councillor Rosoman wishes to take that honour. No, I'll do it. It's recommended that the Executive, after considering comments from the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee, make the following recommendations to the Council. 1. The rent level for council dwellings be increased by 2.7% from the 2019-20 level, with effect from 1st April 2020, in accordance with the Government's permitted guidelines. 2. The weekly the weekly charge for garages rented by both council and non-council tenants be increased by 25 pence per week, excluding VAT, again from the 1st of April. 3. The service charge is in sheltered accommodation be increased by 50 pence per week, again from the 1st of April, to a sum of £19.50. 4. The recharge for energy costs in sheltered accommodation, as appropriate, be increased by 50 pence per week, again from the 1st of April. 5. The revised Housing Revenue Account Business Plan for 2020-21 and 2023-24, as set out in Annex 1, be approved. 6. That we note the approval change for the fees and charges, as set out in Annex 2. 7. The Housing Revenue Account Capital Programmes, as shown in Annex 3, be approved. 8. The proposed use of the Working Balance Reserve and Contingency Reserves to fund capital programmes be approved. And 9. The financing of the capital programmes be approved in line with the resources as shown in Annex 4. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, councillors. Item 10 is pay policy. As it says here, the Localism Act 2011 requires all public authorities to publish such a pay policy programme. The annual pay policy for 2021 is attached, and as you can see from pages 143, there are a couple of very minor amendments concerning dates. There is one sentence added to section 6 on the following page, and the words performance agreement on item 10 on the page thereafter. So they are very minor additions and very minor amendments because we felt happy with the general policy. Does any councillor wish to, any member of the Executive wish to comment? In that case, I put the recommendation to you that the Executive recommends to Council that the pay policy statement for 2020 and 21 financial year, as attached at Annex 1, be approved. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 11, Service Plans 2020 to 2023, 3-year rolling plans. The service plans have been prepared by heads of service in collaboration with their teams and portfolio holders to set out the service objectives for the coming 3 years in line with our corporate strategy and the medium-term financial plan 2020-23. Does any member of the executive wish to comment, expand, or whatever? Thank you very much, in which case I will put the recommendation to you. It is recommended that the Executive A considers the comments and recommendations passed on by the Overview and Scrutiny Committees as listed in Section 6, Consultation and Engagement of this report, and B, approves the final service plans 2020 to 23 proposals as set out in Annex 1 for their implementation from the 1st of April. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 12, Property Matter, Utility Easements, Farnham, Councillor Andy Macleod.
Thank you, Leader. This item is covered from page 263 of your papers, and it's in connection with the Brightwell scheme, and it's to do with the granting of easements for gas and water connections, which will enable the Brightwell Jars development to progress on site. I have to point out, and I'm grateful to Councillor Hyman, who isn't unfortunately present, for having pointed out there is a small problem. The map on page 269 is not entirely accurate in that there was an NMA granted to Crest Nicholson in the April Joint Planning Committee to move the positioning of the building by a very small margin. And this map doesn't reflect that. And it's very important that we have an accurate map for this. It's a legal matter. So we're going to have to request the officers to produce a new map. And my recommendation is we approve this in principle so that we don't delay the whole item, and we give delegated authority to the officers to actually produce the new map. So that's what I'm recommending to the executive. If Councillor Hyman had been here, he had another concern which I feel obliged to point out as he isn't here. There is an exempt item to do with the terms and conditions of the easements. And I can't obviously talk in detail about that because it is an exempt matter. But he had a concern that, and I think I can fairly say this, that the way the document was written, it doesn't just reflect giving permission to do this. In his view, it didn't entirely cover the maintenance issues. And the legal department are happy that the item is okay. And I think Daniel Bainbridge wishes to comment on this, if Daniel would be good enough to do that.
Can I address the issue of the plans? We have checked with Crest this afternoon. Debbie Smith, the project leader for Brightwells, has spoken with 2 reps from Crest, and they've confirmed that the gas and the water companies have been working from the correct plans. It may be that message hasn't come through to Councillor Macleod, but the plans, as far as Crest are concerned, are correct, and therefore the easement lines, in terms of how they interact with the building, adjusted or otherwise, is fine. It should also be recognised that the easement line for the gas, which I think is Councillor Hyman's, was in particular Councillor Hyman's issue with the red line plan, the gas infrastructure will go under the road. So wherever the building line ends up, in line with the amended planning permission, the gas infrastructure will be under the highway and not under where the building goes. So we've had that confirmation from Crest, so I hope that reassures everybody. On the detail of the exempt annex to the report in terms of what the companies will be allowed to do, it's natural for any easement of this nature for it to also include access for repair, maintenance, inspection. The fact that that isn't reflected in the user clause set out in that annex is largely irrelevant, I should say. That is to be expected, that an easement in perpetuity will include those rights, and they are in the documents that we've been dealing with.
Thank you. With that assurance, Councillor Macleod, are you content for the recommendation to move forward as is?
I'm indeed, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any other member of the Executive wish to comment? in which case the recommendation is, it is recommended that the executive approve the easements in order that relevant agreements can be entered into on the terms as proposed in exempt Annex 3. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, councillors. We therefore do not need to go into exempt session, and the meeting is therefore closed.